So, there's a lot to get to today. We've got Russia and nukes, an update from yesterday. We've got the kid in North Dakota, who I haven't talked about yet. I mean, that happened, like 2 or 3 days ago? It's been going around. The story seems to be gathering steam, so I do want to address that. And the third thing is this lawsuit that was unveiled against Trump by the New York Attorney General. And something I heard from the Steve Deace show, who Steve Deace is a guy that I generally trust. I think he's pretty darn level-headed, and something that I guess he's hearing, from an anonymous source. So, take that with you will. It's a rumor, basically. So I'm going to try and hit all of that in one shot. I'm normally bad at hitting multiple topics, but here goes. Yesterday, I was very critical of all these people who were going around taking what Putin said, his clip, "This is not a bluff," and then attributing that to the use of nuclear weapons. Putin, in the clip, did not use the phrase nuclear weapons. That's where my problem was. People were jumping straight to nuclear weapons, acting like there was no further escalation that the Russians could carry out without using nuclear weapons. Russia can escalate a lot before the next stage is nuclear weapons. We are still only at he just announced a partial mobilization of the Russian military. So the Russian military is not fully mobilized yet, and there is a lot more firepower that they can throw at Ukraine before they would ever get to the stage of nuclear, even strategic nuclear usage. Now, Dmitry Medvedev, the far more boisterous former president of Russia, who is currently on the Security Council, so he is someone in the Russian government now. He's a very important person in the Russian government. He's also the leader of the United Russia Party. He today did use the term nuclear weapons or strategic nukes or whatever have you, whatever the Russian equivalent is. He did mention nuclear weapons today. So now it's very fair to criticize the Russians for threatening to use nuclear weapons. But considering that in the West they've been criticizing Russia for threatening to use nukes since pretty much the war started, when they weren't, it's kind of a boy who cried wolf thing. Okay, well, finally Dmitry Medvedev mentioned nukes. Congratulations. And especially since Zelensky, like the week before the initial Russian invasion, was talking about how he was going to get nuclear weapons and how Ukraine was going to become a nuclear state and that Russia would never be able to touch them after that. And then a week later, Russia invaded. Gee, I wonder if there's any connection there. Maybe the Russians saw Zelensky talking about getting a nuclear weapon and they said, oh, gee, I guess it's now or never. We better invade Ukraine right now. But even after what Medvedev said, I think it is highly unlikely that the Russians would ever nuke Ukraine, because it is right next door to them. I don't think they want nuclear fallout, on them again. I don't, Chernobyl was in Ukraine. I don't think that went over very well for Russia. I certainly don't think that detonating a nuclear bomb would be any less of a problem, of an issue for Russia and the rest of Europe. And there's plenty more escalation that they can do before they do that. So, moving on to the boy from North Dakota who was hunted down and slain by a radical Blue Anon extremist. Most of you probably know the story by now. 18-year-old kid was at a block party, and he was talking to some guy who was an acquaintance of his mother or something. And I don't mean for you to read anything into that. I don't think the guy was dating his mom or something like that. I think he was just somebody that she happened to know. And after the party, when the kid left and he was walking home, this 41-year-old man chased him down in his car and ran him over and killed him. And he, reported it to the police and said, hey, don't worry, I got him. I took down this MAGA extremist. He was part of of an extremist Republican group, and he was a threat to society, and I did away with him. So the guy seems very calm. He doesn't seem like he's, out of his mind. He seems like he just he very strongly believes that he had a right to kill this kid. I mean, that's why he was, he didn't quite understand why he had to post bond, because in his eyes, he did nothing wrong. He was being a patriotic American and taking out a traitor who was trying to destabilize and overthrow our government. All this is punch a Nazi taken to its logical conclusion. Republicans are Nazis. It's okay to punch Nazis. Well, if it's okay to punch a Nazi because Nazis are terrible, irredeemable human beings, is it such a stretch to say it's okay to kill them? No, I don't think that's okay, because I don't want to be killed. I don't think it's okay to kill anybody. That's why I'm anti-war. I think war is a very bad thing. War is just mass political violence. And so what do you consider this killing other than a very small act of war, but an act of war nonetheless? And we should expect more of this, because the way that the narrative has been spun, the Blue Anon crowd are the good guys. They're the white hats. They are in the right. They are in control. And there are these neo-Confederate, evil, treacherous Trumpers in the mold of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who are trying to overthrow the United States. And so in the eyes of your average liberal voter, the average Republican is an enemy of this country, and they are essentially an invading influence, a fifth column maybe. Maybe that's a better way to look at it. They see MAGA Americans, which I believe was President Biden's term, as sleeper cells in one sense, or maybe just flat-out enemy soldiers living amongst them. And so from their perspective, it doesn't seem that crazy for them to think of killing one of these so-called MAGA Americans. And I almost, even though I'm very critical of Trump, I don't like Trump personally, a lot of problems with him, I'm 99.9% certain that they would lump me in with them anyway. So I almost include myself in the MAGA Americans thing, because to them it's not, it's not just about, oh, did you vote for Trump? It's, are you a part of my club? When you have this kind of an attitude where you are, a radical in favor of the established order and the state apparatus, you have an attitude of either you're with me or you're against me. So if you are not some, radical zealot who is willing to fight and die for the honor of, the FBI or the ATF or the IRS or something like that, if you don't worship at their altar, you are an enemy too, which is the same as being a MAGA American. And I think that this will get a lot worse in 2024, no matter who's running, whether Trump runs or not, which I've said the whole time, I think that Trump absolutely will run again. I felt that since, January 21st or something? Isn't that when they do the inauguration of the new president? Since Biden was inaugurated, I've never changed my mind that Trump is going to run again, because that's just how I interpret Trump's attitude. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who wants to go out on a low note. I think he wants to come back and win, and that's how he would want to leave. He would want to leave a winner, not leave a loser. But, before I get to the but, I think that if that's the case, people like this Shannon Brandt fellow will activate all across the country. They will feel very much like, legitimately, they will feel like they are under threat. They will have severe anxiety. That's real. Their feelings are real. I think that their feelings are crazy, but their feelings will be real. They will think that this country is under assault and potentially about to fall under Russian rule or something, or maybe he'll come up with a different country by then. Maybe he'll say that Trump is a Swedish puppet or something next. And so marginal crazy people will be pushed over the edge, and you will see more violence like this. You will see more incidents like this. And even if Trump is not the guy, I think that they will still be whipped into quite the fever pitch. Just like, remember George Bush was evil, and then Mitt Romney was evil, he was the worst guy ever, and then, Trump was worse than Romney. Whoever comes after Trump, they will say, oh, well, this guy's even worse than Trump. But I think that there is something to be said about how Trump's personality broke people in a way that past Republicans didn't. I mean, it's very clearly the case. He has a unique talent for triggering the libs. But getting on to what this rumor that Steve Deace circulated on his program yesterday. People like me who think that it's pretty much guaranteed that Trump is going to run may be wrong. And I guess for some context, Steve Deace, he's from Iowa, or lives in Iowa at least, worked in Republican politics for a good number of years, worked on the Cruz campaign in 2016, I think, and has been around the block, and I guess knows a lot of these people. Very much doesn't have insider mentality, though. He is quite based by talk radio standards, I would say. His show was one of the best sources for learning vaccine disinformation that was being censored off of social media, since he is on the Blaze and doesn't have to worry so much about YouTube. They just don't upload his shows to YouTube really anymore at all, I think. And so that's the only reason that I'm taking this rumor seriously. So he was told, not yesterday, the day before, I guess. And I believe him when he says that he has someone who told him this, but to me, he's a trustworthy enough guy. Do you have to take his word for it? No, it's just a rumor. So if you don't like rumors, skip the rest of this video. But I found it interesting, and I want to talk about it in case it's real, because it is a big, if true, kind of rumor. So he heard apparently ahead of time about Letitia James's lawsuit that she was going to unveil against the Donald yesterday. And what was notable about that lawsuit was that it was not just suing Donald Trump, but it also named, I believe, all of his children. And they're trying to sue them for fraud for claiming that the election was rigged, which, for the sake of YouTube, I do not believe at all. I think that this was the most secure election of my lifetime. But Donald Trump does not, and he and his kids are being sued for that. Now, Deace claims that he was tipped off about this ahead of time, a day early, and that this person told him that the real motive for the suit was essentially to get discovery. And then once they had discovery, try and find some kind of fraud that they could then charge him with criminally. Which, I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds like a reasonable explanation. I could certainly see the New York Attorney General filing a lawsuit like this to try and discover criminality. And, if not, no matter what, the real purpose of the suit would be to try and tie up Trump in litigation and money and essentially try and blackmail him into not running for president, especially by going after his kids. Because let's say Trump says, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to run no matter what, you can't stop me, I'll spend my entire fortune on legal bills if I have to, because I guess it's being estimated, or no, it's not being estimated. The lawsuit is for $250 million. Who knows what his legal fees would be. But anyway, they're going to try and drain him through lawfare. And even if he himself is willing to undergo that, it's very tough for him to make that decision for his kids and put his kids through that. Especially Ivanka, who is not, a fan of Trump's politics or Trump's base to begin with. And say what you will about old Trumpo, I do believe that he does genuinely care about his children and their well-being. So I do think that it's plausible if the rest of this plays out the way that this source was telling Mr. Dace. If indeed this lawsuit is just going to be used as discovery to try and find something to charge him with criminally and try and bleed his kids and everything and just, rake them over the coals, run them through the legal system, and inflict pain not just on Trump but on his kids, I could, and under the table they offer him a deal. Hey, don't run for president, and we'll call the whole thing off, and your kids can go, get on with their lives. I could see Trump possibly taking that out, especially since I think that his legal counsel has proved to be subpar in the past for really one of two reasons. One, I don't think he's picked the best people. He's picked establishment Republican hacks to represent him, so that's one problem. And two, you can't get a lot of decent lawyers who want to represent Trump because the lawyers know that they will be held professionally accountable, which means essentially that they'll get canceled. They could be disbarred like other Trump lawyers, and all of their other clients will leave them. So essentially, Trump doesn't have access to the best counsel to begin with. And so I don't want to be one of these people who comes out and says, oh my gosh, Trump is finished. Because every time they say that, he's not. I guess I think that this is possible. Now, Daniel Horowitz, who was on Dace's show when they were going over this, when he was going over this rumor that he heard, I very much share his opinion that an indictment of Trump could very well kickstart a national divorce. Because as much as there are terrible policy reasons why the U.S. should already have broken up, people are much more energized by personal politics, by personalities like Trump. And so even if, let's say, all of the crazy woke social stuff and the ESG stuff and the outlawing cars, now semi-trucks in California, and I'm sure soon freight trains and even freighter ships, which international conventions are trying to outlaw freighter ships for being too, environmentally unsound. Even if all, and blocking drilling, all this stuff, even all of this quality of life stuff, even if that didn't energize people into supporting a national divorce, an overt preemptive coup against someone who potentially could become the elected president of the United States, a former elected president of the United States running again, that very well would be, I think, the final straw for many people in this country. And that would kickstart us down that road. People would have to recognize that they took Trump out. If they do this, Trump will have been taken out so that he couldn't be elected, because they were afraid that people would want to vote for him, because people do want to vote for him. And if that's the case, if people's choices are taken away by politically motivated prosecutions, then we do not live in a democratic system, and there is no real reason to try and salvage the union. Now, Dace did not agree with this, but I do 100%. I think that this is very, very much plausible. But again, there's a lot of ifs here. It's if this lawsuit against Trump doesn't go nowhere, which so many of the other lawsuits against Trump have. This lawsuit, one, has to go somewhere. Two, kind of has to result in an indictment and force Trump out of the race. And then, if those two ifs are met, then that third if is quite likely. So yes, the second half of this video is pretty much all speculation. But when there's this much crazy stuff going on, and there's things that we could have never imagined, 3 years ago that have already happened, I don't think that this kind of speculation is worthless. I think we have to speculate to try and mentally prepare ourselves for these sorts of things, because even if it doesn't happen exactly the way we imagine, crazy things are bound to happen, especially in the lead up to the 2024 election. 2024, just like 2020 and 2016 before that, will be the most heated and insane election of our lifetimes. And every 4 years, we are closer to the breaking point. I think the more people see conservative teenagers and Republican presidential candidates, especially anti-establishment Republican presidential candidates, being taken out of commission, whether that means they're getting run over by a car or shot or maybe kidnapped in the future, who knows? What sorts of terrible things might happen. Or in just Trump's case, lawfared out of commission. The more people see that, I think the more they will give up hope for American democracy as currently constituted, just like I did so many years ago. And people will learn that the only way that we can truly govern ourselves is by throwing off the yoke of the federal system and trying to build out democracy closer to home, whether that be at the state or local level. I certainly have much more faith in the political system here in Florida than I do in Washington. And I'm not, super thrilled, with this system here in Florida, but we at least have the ability to get people with outsider perspectives in there. And yes, I am referring to DeSantis. DeSantis is not another Jeb Bush or Charlie Crist or Rick Scott. And you know what? He won the primary fair and square, and there wasn't any monkey business. There wasn't anybody trying to put Ron DeSantis in prison to stop him from beating Adam Putnam in the primary, so that the next in line establishment hack could take the throne. Putnam, to his credit, stepped aside. He did not try and sabotage DeSantis, and instead DeSantis's campaign inherited the party infrastructure and was able to use it to try and win in 2018, which they did, even if a lot of the Republican establishment was not happy about it. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.